I need to tell you something that most people get completely wrong about making an impression. You think you know what matters, but you probably don't. We've been taught that the big gestures are what count. The expensive dinner, the flashy car, the perfect physique. But I'm going to show you something that actually works, and it's been hiding in plain sight the entire time. Have you ever noticed how some people just have a way of sticking with you? Days, weeks, sometimes months after you meet them, you still remember exactly what they said. It's not because they were trying hard. It's actually the opposite. They understood something fundamental about human connection that most people never figure out. And the crazy part is, once you understand this, everything changes. What I'm about to share with you isn't manipulation. It's not some trick to get what you want. It's something deeper. It's about genuinely seeing people for who they really are and having the courage to tell them what you actually see. When you do this right, something shifts. People respond to it because they can feel the authenticity behind it. I've spent years watching what actually works in real relationships, and I've noticed a pattern. The men who leave the deepest impression aren't the ones trying the hardest. They're the ones who say the right things at the right time. Things that make people feel truly understood. And I'm going to break down exactly what those things are. Let me start with something simple that most people overlook completely. There's a certain way of seeing someone that makes them feel different. Not special in that fake, rehearsed way. Special in the way where they know you actually paid attention. You notice something about them that matters. Take the small details of who someone is. The way they carry themselves, the way they make others feel, the things they care about that aren't obvious at first glance. These are the pieces of someone's identity that actually define them, but almost nobody takes the time to acknowledge. When you do, it creates this moment where the other person realizes you're not just looking at them, you're actually seeing them. I knew this guy once who had this ability to make anyone feel like the most interesting person in the room. People would actually lean in when he talked. Not because he was saying anything earth-shattering, but because he paid attention to the subtle things. He noticed when someone's voice changed slightly when talking about something they cared about. He remembered details from conversations that happened months ago. He pointed out things about people that they didn't even know about themselves yet. What he was doing was recognizing the layers. Every person has this invisible depth that's easy to miss if you're not paying attention. The strength it takes to be honest in a world that rewards pretending. The intelligence behind how someone approaches problems. The kindness in small gestures that nobody else noticed. The courage it takes to chase something when most people would quit. Here's where it gets interesting. When you acknowledge these things, when you point out what you actually see, something happens in the other person's mind. They feel validated not just in how they look, but in who they actually are. And that's infinitely more powerful than any surface-level compliment could ever be. Let me give you the first example of what I mean. There's something about noticing someone's presence when they walk into a space. I'm not talking about their appearance, though that matters too. I'm talking about the energy they bring. Some people have this quality where the entire atmosphere shifts when they arrive. The room feels lighter, people's shoulders drop, conversations feel easier. That's a real thing, and it's incredibly rare. When you tell someone your presence changes how people feel around you, you're not just flattering them, you're acknowledging that they have an impact, that their existence matters in a tangible way. Think about how many times you've heard that in your life. Most people never hear it. They go through their entire lives never knowing that they actually affect others in this way. The second thing I want you to understand is about noticing someone's mind. Not just their thoughts, but how they think, the way they ask questions, the connections they make that other people miss, the unique angle they bring to conversations. There are people out there who see the world in ways that most of us never consider. They don't just follow the path that's already been laid out. They notice the alternatives. They question what everyone else accepts. When you recognize that and point it out, you're doing something powerful. You're telling them that their perspective has value. You're acknowledging that their way of seeing things is different, and different in this case is something worth appreciating. Most people want to fit in. But the people who stand out are the ones brave enough to think for themselves. And when someone notices that about you, it feels incredible. Here's another layer that most people miss. There's a difference between noticing what someone does and understanding why they do it. Some people go through life with this constant drive to improve, to push themselves, to become more than they were yesterday. It's not about ego. It's not about proving something to others. It's about this internal fire that won't let them settle. That's a rare quality, and it's worth acknowledging. When you see that in someone and you point it out, you're recognizing their character. You're saying, I see the effort you're putting in, and I respect it. That hits differently than any surface level compliment, because you're acknowledging the hard part, the invisible part, the part that most people don't see. Let me talk about something that's becoming increasingly rare in our world: the ability to make others feel truly safe and valued. I'm talking about that quality some people have where you feel like you can be completely yourself around them. No judgment, no need to impress, no need to hide the parts of you that don't fit the mold. There are people who create that space just by being who they are. That's an incredible gift, and most people with that gift don't even realize they have it. They just do what feels natural. But from the outside, it's remarkable. When you acknowledge that, when you tell someone you have this way of making people feel accepted, you're pointing out something that took them years to develop. That's powerful. Now, I want to talk about something that almost nobody addresses: the difference between someone who cares and someone who actually does something about it. There are people who notice when someone's struggling. They don't just notice, though. They act, they show up, they remember to follow up, they invest time and energy into making sure the people around them know they matter. That's thoughtfulness. Real, genuine, consistent thoughtfulness. And it's becoming extinct. Most people are too wrapped up in their own lives to notice when someone else is hurting. But the people who do notice, who actually care enough to act, those are special people. When you acknowledge that quality, you're honoring something fundamental about their character. Here's something I've noticed about people who actually inspire others. It's not just about their success. It's about their integrity. It's about watching someone stay committed to something, even when it's hard, even when nobody's watching, even when it would be easier to quit. That kind of consistency, that kind of character, that's what actually inspires people, not the Instagram highlight reel. The real work, the dedication, the refusal to compromise on what matters. When you see that in someone and you acknowledge it, you're doing something rare. You're recognizing that what makes someone great isn't the result. It's the commitment to the process. It's the daily choice to show up even when you don't feel like it. That's the kind of thing that sticks with people. Let me be direct about why this matters. We live in a world where everyone's constantly trying to prove their worth. Everyone's competing for attention. Everyone's wondering if they're good enough. And in that environment, most interactions feel shallow, surface level, just another transaction. But when you have a conversation where someone actually sees you, really sees you, something shifts. It's rare enough that it stands out. It's memorable enough that you carry it with you. It's meaningful enough that it changes how you see yourself. That's the real power of this approach. It's not about manipulation. It's not about getting something from someone. It's about genuine recognition. It's about looking at another human being and acknowledging what you actually see. The courage, the intelligence, the kindness, the strength, the unique way they move through the world. When you do this authentically, when you're not trying to impress, but genuinely recognizing something real about someone, the response is completely different than when you're just saying what you think they want to hear. People can feel the difference. I remember this conversation I had once where someone pointed out something about me that I didn't even know about myself. They said, the way you ask questions shows that you actually care about understanding, not just winning the conversation. That stuck with me for years, not because it was flattery, but because it was true, and I'd never consciously realized it about myself. That person saw me more clearly than I saw myself in that moment. That's what happens when you move beyond surface level observation. You're not just complimenting someone's outfit or their smile, you're recognizing the invisible architecture of who they are, the values, the character, the way they show up in the world. The challenge is that most people aren't trained to look that deeply. We're taught to notice the obvious things, the things that are easy to see. But the real power is in noticing what's hidden beneath the surface, the discipline behind the results, the kindness behind the actions, the vision behind the goals. Here's what I want you to take from all of this. Real connection happens when you move beyond the shallow layer and acknowledge what you actually see about someone's character. Not in a creepy way, not in a way that feels invasive, but in a genuine, respectful way that shows you've been paying attention. The people who do this naturally, the ones who have this ability to make others feel seen and valued, they tend to stand out in relationships. They tend to have deeper friendships. They tend to be remembered. And it's not because they're better looking or wealthier or more successful. It's because they've figured out something that most people never do. They understand that real human connection is about recognition. It's about seeing someone for who they actually are and having the courage to say it out loud. When you practice this, when you start noticing the deeper qualities in people and acknowledging them, something shifts in your relationships. People respond to you differently. They open up more. They trust you more. They remember you. And it's because they feel genuinely seen by you. The most interesting part is how this works in reverse. When you start looking for the deeper qualities in other people, you start looking at yourself differently too. You start noticing your own character, your own impact, the way you actually show up in the world. And that creates this positive feedback loop where you're both becoming better versions of yourselves. This isn't about being fake or trying to manipulate anyone. It's about developing the ability to see people clearly and having the confidence to acknowledge what you see. It's about moving past the script and actually connecting with someone. It's about having the courage to be real in a world that often demands pretending. The most powerful thing you can give someone isn't money or status or attention. It's genuine recognition. It's someone seeing you clearly and acknowledging what they see. That's rare. That's memorable. That's what actually builds real relationships. So here's my challenge to you. Start paying attention. Really paying attention. Look for the invisible qualities in the people around you. Notice the strength in their character. Notice the impact they have. Notice the unique way they move through the world. And then have the courage to tell them what you see. Not in a rehearsed way, not in a way that feels forced, but genuinely, authentically, with real recognition. When you do that, you'll start to see the real power of human connection. Not the shallow interactions that dominate social media, not the surface level exchanges that make up most conversations, but the real thing, the kind of connection that actually matters, the kind that changes how people see themselves and how they move through the world. That's where the real magic is.